Why, hello there! Welcome back to part 5 of The Girl Who Could Fly. Um, yeah, we'll wait for our friend here. See if she pops on in a little bit or not. This light is bothering me. It won't stay moved away. Oh well. Oh, yay, there she is! Why, hello! Welcome back to The Girl Who Could Fly. Whereas last time Piper went to go find her wooden bird necklace that Conrad allegedly thought that he threw down the trash pipe, and then Piper went and found all the horrible experiments they were doing on all the animals, and she's maybe just about to be caught. We don't know yet, but here we go. The Girl Who Could Fly, Chapter 13. Letitia Hellion was gently panting from her sprint out of the testing lab. Piper was on the verge of hyperventilating, and Conrad suddenly shumped his shoulders and allowed his facial features to return to their normal look of sullen complaint. For an agonizing 3 seconds, there was silence. At the precise moment that Piper was sure her chest might break open, or that she'd burst into tears or faint, or some combination of all three, Conrad threw himself upon the awkward quiet. "It's Piper! She's hiding something," he blurted, roughly shoving Piper forward at Dr. Hellion. Piper's mouth flew open. What happened to the Conrad she had just been speaking to? He had become an entirely different person. "Is that true, Piper?" Dr. Hellion was amazingly calm, her eyes gentle and kind. "Are you hiding something?" "Tell her," Conrad sulked. Piper looked at Conrad in mute dismay. What was she supposed to say? "What is it, Piper? You can tell me." "Bella stole something and Piper saw it," Conrad tattled. "What?" No kidding. Now Piper was utterly lost. "I saw everything, and if you don't tell, I will," Conrad turned to Dr. Hellion. "Bella had this little black bug in her hand when she was leaving. It looked like a cricket, and she showed it to Piper when no one else was looking." Conrad smugly turned to Piper as though he'd just put one up on her. Piper looked at Conrad and marveled at his complete genius. "Is that true, Piper?" This revelation made Dr. Hellion relax and sit down at her desk. Well, Piper didn't have as much practice as Conrad, but she tried her best to play along. "Bella was walking and, well, I saw it in her hand and then Bella let Piper touch it before she hid it in her pocket," Conrad finished quickly. Dr. Hellion nodded carefully, looking between the two children. Her eyes gave nothing away, and as usual her face was as calm as a lake of still water. "I see. I warned her she had to tell. Piper, for your information, students aren't permitted to interact with specimens unless supervised. Conrad is correct that it is your duty to report this." "I'm sorry, Dr. Hellion. I don't want to break any rules." "Yes, I know that, Piper." Dr. Hellion paused, looking between the two of them. "And what is his to hear about a fight?" Conrad looked genuinely surprised, and even consulted Piper with a confused expression, as if to see if she knew what Dr. Hellion was talking about. "No, there was no fight." Piper couldn't get over how convincing Conrad was. It was eerie. "Nurse Toll reported that Piper's bird was thrown in the garbage," Dr. Hellion persisted. Once again, Conrad's amazement could not have been more genuine. "As you can see for yourself, Piper's holding her wooden bird right now." Conrad nudged Piper, and Piper held up the bird. "I see." As usual, Conrad had all of his bases covered. Something told Dr. Hellion that if she asked the other children, they would tell a similar story. It was even possible that by tomorrow, Nurse Toll would claim that he'd misreported the incident. There was nothing to be gained from questioning them further, even though Piper's eyes were as wide as 2 moons and her knees were shaking. "Well, that certainly explains everything. Thank you for coming forward. You may return to the dormitory now." "Good night, Dr. Hellion." Conrad turned to leave, and Piper followed him. Before they could reach the door, Dr. Hellion's phone rang. "Yes, Agent. What about the surveillance tapes? What sort of computer error?" "Find it hard to believe that nothing can be retrieved." "I see." Conrad didn't look or speak to Piper all the way back to the dormitory, and by the time they returned, it was already bedtime. "Lights out," Nurse Toll patrolled the dormitory hallway. In a state of shock and anguish, Piper waited for 30 agonizing minutes in her room after lights out. During the wait, she tried to calm her nerves by tending to the little black cricket whom she decided to name Sebastian. She had never known anyone named Sebastian, but it struck Piper as a very grand name, and the more she watched the cricket, it became clear to her that that he was a very, very fine and elegant creature indeed. She created a little house for Sebastian on her desk using a small box, and he seemed thankful for her efforts and settled into his box for the evening. The instant Nurse Toll completed his second night check, Piper flew out her window and landed in Conrad's room, where she found him completely dressed and calmly packing a case on his bed. What is going on here? I would have thought it was obvious, even to you by now. Conrad wasn't in the least surprised to have Piper suddenly come flying through his window and continued to calmly place books and files into his case. But they're hurting all those beautiful creatures, Piper blathered, on the verge of hysterics. I saw that giraffe and the turtle and the rose and so many others. It's not right. We gotta get out of here. For once, you're absolutely correct, on all accounts. I couldn't have put it better myself. Unfortunately, getting out of here wasn't possible to do until you arrived. I needed a flyer to make an escape work. But now that you're here and you've got your head on straight, we can go. Conrad closed his case, and Piper realized that he had actually packed up all of his belongings and was ready to leave that very instant. You mean we're gonna leave right now? Just like that? Piper took a step back, unprepared. Too much had happened in too short a time and space, and she was reeling. Like you said, what are we waiting for? But, well, I mean, shouldn't we tell someone? Do something? Conrad sighed and put his case down. He seemed older than his 11 years, and he crossed his arms over his chest and looked at Piper like a parent would a confused child. Oh, so you want to go through all that song and dance? All right, let's get it over with so that we can get out of here. I'll start at the beginning. Here, you'd better sit down. This might take a while. Conrad pointed to the bed, and Piper sat on the edge of it, her eyes wide. He spoke with strained patience, as though he'd gone through this a million times, which he had, if only in his own head. First of all, did Dr. Hellion ever tell you what this institute is called? Piper thought back and realized that Dr. Hellion hadn't, nor had Piper ever asked. No, she sure didn't. And what about the logo? Have you seen this around? Conrad pointed to a piece of stationery with the letters INSANE printed neatly across the top. Piper nodded. She'd seen it everywhere. They all had. She'd never given it any thought. These letters stand for the Institute of Normalcy, Stability, and Non-Exceptionality, or INSANE to make things a little less wordy. INSANE is a perfectly constructed, faultlessly operated facility with only one purpose: to make everything and anything that passes through its doors normal. It is 100% effective in this task. Since its inception, it has crafted a seamless and systematic process that ensures absolute results. Conrad reached for the lamp on his desk and switched it on. Because he'd taken out the normal light bulb and replaced it with a black bulb, the light suddenly exposed to Piper white writing on every square inch of Conrad's room. Late at night, when everyone else was sleeping, Conrad had been hard at work. Trust a genius to devise a foolproof way to hide his secrets in plain view. Formulas were scrawled across walls where there were diagrams on his doors, charts covered the desk, and even the ceiling wasn't spared his handiwork. All of which was undetectable without the black light. Holy moly! Piper had to crane her neck to take it all in. Conrad pointed to a diagram on the door, trying to focus Piper. Over here you can see how it all starts, with tracking devices that have been positioned across the globe. 1 second. Yeah? Okay. Lost my place. Positioned across the globe. They quickly identify and isolate a specimen that shows itself to be exceptional, whether it be a bird or a fish or a human. Conrad next pointed to a larger diagram with an array of arrows and formulas. As soon as a positive identification on a creature is established, it is then flagged by a satellite. Retrieval units are immediately dispatched to apprehend it. From the moment the specimen is flagged, an electronic surveillance net is thrown over it, making it a sitting duck. By the time it is brought down here into the facility, its fate is sealed. Make no mistake, there is only one way out of here, and that is Dr. Hellion's way. Conrad smartly tapped the corner of what appeared to be an ostensibly ordinary Snoopy calendar that hung on the wall. Immediately it unraveled to the floor like an accordion, revealing still more diagrams, charts, and numbers. First, the specimen is placed under observation and carefully studied. Scientists document and record all physical and behavioral characteristics, creating an exhaustive dossier of information, which is then used to isolate a chemical that will stop it from doing whatever it is that they do, and stop it from doing whatever it is they do not consider normal. After years of trial and error, they have found that the appropriate drug administered to the specimen will promptly alter its brain patterns and physiological chemistry. Once that is accomplished, the bulk of their work is done, and all they need is time before the specimen will revert to normalcy. They know that if the specimen does not use its ability for a certain period of time, the ability will be lost forever. In other words, you will have to use it or lose it. Conrad paused to let the information sink in before moving to the formulas on the opposite wall and continuing more quietly. While the vast majority respond to the right drug, there are exceptions to the rule, and in those rare cases, Dr. Hellion will resort to more radical and invasive means. She'll have the specimen surgically torn apart and put back together again. She'll use gene therapy, alter its DNA, maim the offending exceptional characteristics, and finally, if all else fails, just destroy the specimen altogether. That is what they are doing on level 4. Piper's face was deathly white, and she was trembling slightly. And as she didn't seem like she was on the verge of completely losing it, Conrad took a breath and continued. But the human specimens, like you and me, well, we are their greatest challenge. Other creatures only require physical and biological alterations, but with the human animal, an additional layer of difficulty is added because of this. Conrad pointed to his head. The psychological, intellectual, and emotional aspects of the human being make us much more difficult to manage and control. It's taken the researchers a while, but they now understand that to successfully rehabilitate us and create lasting normalcy, they must make us want it, embrace it, and see its value. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And how do they do this? By befriending us, giving us what we want, making us comfortable, and, if at all possible, gaining our unwitting complicity in our own demise. Something they accomplish all too easily in most cases. Conrad gave Piper a pointed look, and Piper filled with shame, looking away miserably. Why had she wanted to believe Dr. Hellion? Why had she said that she wouldn't fly when flying was all that she'd ever loved? It's all very subtle, of course, and the reasoning is flawless and logical. If it didn't make sense, our brains wouldn't accept it and wouldn't go along with it. They know if we don't use our ability, we will soon lose it, and they're astute enough to realize that the most effective way of accomplishing this is by distracting our attention and refocusing it onto the normal and mundane. Old Hell has a masterful grasp on the delicate balance between encouragement and gentle persuasion toward normalcy, while at the same time negatively reinforcing any unapproved behavior until all traces of the talent are extinguished altogether. Too firm a hand and we'll resist and rebel. It's much easier and more effective to distract us and keep us happy and calm. They don't truly teach us anything to keep our brains quiet and inactive. Their rigid schedule is designed to lull us into a stupor while they silently and secretly go about their real work of killing our talent once and for all. Conrad's words did not mention all the numbers and diagrams began pressing in on Piper, and her head started to feel like it was spinning. She held onto the bed to steady herself, while Conrad leapt atop his chair and started pointing to his work on the ceiling. You see, they employ a two-pronged approach. Breaking a subject down mentally is half the battle. The other half requires drugs, how they do this, you ask, in the food. The delicious, entirely amazing food that is perfectly tailored to your taste buds is made precisely so that it will mask all the chemicals they're shoving into it. And they're pumping a lot of chemicals into you each and every day, make no mistake. All the while, they carefully observe your reaction to them until they isolate just the right drug that is going to make you a little slower, stop you from thinking quite like you did, maybe even make you mildly happy, but extremely docile. As soon as that happens, and they are getting better and faster at it each and every day, you no longer want to use your ability, and at the same time, the psychological balance inside your body, the phys- physiological balance inside your body alters, never to be the same again. Their methods are simple, effective, and foolproof. One day, a kid wakes up and seems to remember that there was once something that they could do, something special, something different. But for the life of them, they can't remember what it is. But they won't mind so much because they've got an incredibly comfortable bed, and their thoughts stretch only as far as their next meal and how good the food will be. And for the most part, give, they are given anything and everything they ask for, so they figure, why fight it? Without actually realizing it, they've sold themselves out for a cushy bed and a raging food addiction. We're like rats in a maze down here, and the only way we'll get out is by being normal. Piper hadn't realized that she'd stopped breathing somewhere in the middle of Conrad's speech, and suddenly she gasped like a fish pulled out of water. No! She shook her head. No! Are you going to lose it? Because we're on a schedule here, and we really don't have time for you to get into a flap. Sorry to ruin your night and all, Conrad, but it's not every day you figure out that folks have got it in for you. Yeah, well, get over it. You're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. What? My name's Piper, and I'm from Lowland County. Right, forget it. Can we go now? Conrad picked up his case for a second time. So that's why you won't eat anything and you're stealing Jasper's food. Everything was suddenly falling into place to Piper's mind. You didn't want to eat the drugs, and Jasper's drugs don't affect you because they're meant for him. Right, right. Conrad nodded impatiently. Jasper's scheduled to graduate next, and I was trying to prolong it as much as I could to give him a chance to remember his ability. Clearly, it's not working. Piper was glad she was sitting down. Not Jasper! Afraid so. They've got you good and hopped up too. Obviously, they've hit on just the right chemical combination because you're walking slowly and you've got this dazed look in your eyes. If you stay, it will only be a matter of time. It will? Now that she thought about it, Piper had been feeling very sedated and slow. She had chalked it up to being relaxed, but now it was all clear to her. You're right. So you were picking on me because I needed to wake you up and the drug was slowing you down. I needed you to figure out the truth and fast, and I had to push you a little bit. Dr. Hellion's taken a particular interest in you, and it's dangerous to your health. From the moment you arrived and I discovered that you were a flyer, I knew there existed the possibility of escape. That changed everything. But what about the others? Do they know? Piper had a million questions. No, I tried telling them, but it doesn't work. They won't believe you, or if they're too firmly hooked into Hellion's reality, the shock of the truth will drive them crazy. Bella. Bella? That's what happened to Bella? I tried my best with her, but she couldn't take it. Conrad hated defeat of any kind. But we can't. But can't we do something for her now? I mean, if she was to listen and understand, couldn't she get her ability back? Conrad shook his head. She passed the point of no return. That point is different for everyone, but once they make you give it up, I mean, really, truly give it up, you will never get your ability back. Bella gave it up. You could see it in her eyes. The sheer tragedy of losing Bella and her extraordinary gift was almost more than Piper could bear. Bella's light had shone so brightly. Undoubtedly, she'd been destined to bring so much joy and beauty to the world. Instead, she was now gray and lifeless. A fate the silver giraffe was being threatened with at that very moment. And what of all the other nameless, faceless children who suffered a similar fate? What was to become of them, and what could be done about it? Conrad didn't want to give Piper any more time to dwell on the news, or to get lost in her thoughts. All right, so now that that's sorted out, I need to know if you've ever carried anything or anyone when you've flown. Can you estimate a comfortable weight range? And I'll need to an approximate flying distance before you require rest. But why? Why do they want to do this to us? Conrad swallowed hard and reminded himself to be patient. Because they consider us dangerous and they can't control us. The Mustafa twins could start a tsunami in their spare time. Daisy can lift a tank without breaking a sweat, and Myrtle can run so fast they don't even have instruments capable of clocking her. Unless we're normal, there's no place for us in the world, and that's why they've got us locked up down here. So we escape and get help. Is that the plan? What help? No one will help us. If we ever tried to come back, they'd capture us, and that would be the end of it. No, we've got to get out of here and hide where they'll never find us. But the others, what'll happen to them? Piper thought of Violet and her gentle kindness, and Lily's mischievous pranks, not to mention the giraffe tied up in a darkened room on the fourth level. Conrad shrugged, then sighed. There's nothing we can do. We'll have to stay here. It's better that two get out than none. We can't do anything for them. You mean just leave him here? Do nothing? Listen, I've done all the calculations, and there are little to no statistically significant probabilities that we can get them out. More people generate more variables, which creates more risk. It's too dangerous. Conrad didn't even want to try and explain all the mathematical work he'd done on organizing this escape. If Piper was having difficulty comprehending what to him was an obvious and plain situation, there was no way she was going to be able to absorb higher mathematical reasoning. This is the only way. I don't believe you. Even if you're right, I don't care. I won't leave him behind. Piper was adamant. There's got to be another way. There isn't. Conrad's patience was at its end. He picked up his case for the last time. Now let's get out of here. Before Conrad could reach Piper, she shot off of the floor and flew out of the window, hovering just out of his range. Conrad rushed forward. What are you doing? Get out of sight before someone sees you. I can't do it, Conrad. I can't just leave them. I can't. I just can't leave without him. Violet's my friend. All those animals and things I saw on the fourth level, they nearly broke my heart. Where am I going to hide where I won't remember them? Conrad didn't have an answer. Piper knew that she might not be as smart as Conrad, and she even knew that she was probably in shock and wasn't thinking straight. But even so, she knew that she couldn't live out the rest of her days knowing that she'd left the others behind. Either we all leave together or we don't leave at all, and that's the end of it. If you're such a genius, you'll just have to figure out a plan that works. I'm telling you, I can't. Nothing will work. Piper, we're not in some comic book characters with happy endings all mapped out for us. Half these kids got abilities that are all but useless for the purposes of mounting an escape, or for anything else for that matter. All the same, I reckon you'll find a way to make it all work out. Piper floated back and forth. I knew you were going to be a problem. I'm not aiming to cause you problems, Conrad. The way I see it, I've got no one but each other right now, and so we'd best figure a way to get along. Piper started to fly back to her room. Over her shoulder, she said, "You'll think up a real good plan, and don't you worry yourself. I'm going to help out too." Piper help him think up a plan? If Conrad wasn't worried before, he was now. End of chapter 13. You're right, Emma. I love him, but also, please stop. All right, chapter 14. Conrad was desperate. His desperation meant he needed Piper McLeod, and Conrad Harrington III had never needed anyone. It's certainly safe to say that no one had ever needed him, let alone cared about him. Both his father and mother saw to it they had absolutely anything and everything except their time, attention, and affection. A child was a necessary accessory in a politically motivated power couple, and they were overjoyed when Conrad III arrived. He was he was exactly what he should have been, only more. Unfortunately, much more. His acute intelligence was something that neither of them wanted, and initially the only use they could find for it was as a dinner party diversion. Thank you, Nanny. Do you put Connie on my lap? Abigail Churchill Carrington accepted the boy outfitted in a spotless silk sailor suit and held him as one slightly afraid, like he was a child chinchilla or an exotic snake. Dinner guests instantly cooed on cue, their dessert forks pausing en route to their lips, dripping with zabagloin and balsamic roasted strawberries. What a lovely child! He looks just like his father. You must be so proud. Yes, yes, thank you, Abigail smiled, turning to the guest seated at her right. You know, Mr. Vice President, our little Connie has already memorized all the presidents and states, too. Such a wonder for a 2-year-old, don't you think? Of course, both Galileo and Newton are in my family tree, but that is neither here nor there. All the same, you simply can't get away from good breeding. Nanny, why are Connie's eyes closed? Nanny! Oh, they're open again. Connie, Connie dear, recite the states and their capitals for our nice guests. Abigail proudly held her child until he had finished his recitation, and the guests applauded, whereupon Nanny whisked the child out of sight, not to be seen or thought about again, until it was required at the next dinner party, or tea party, or photo opportunity. At the age of 6, darling little Connie's performance schedule was cut short when he questioned his father on a matter of foreign policy in front of the Chinese ambassador at the annual Thanksgiving cocktail party. What had begun as a lovely diversion was proving to be an embarrassment and liability to the family. Conrad's intelligence was so extraordinary that no teacher could surpass it, let alone match it. No other school would accept him, particularly the best ones. Not long afterward, Conrad started to, in the word of the best child psychologist in Washington, D.C., at the rate of $500 an hour, act out. At 7 years old, little Connie's acting out culminated in a foray into the National Defense Department mainframe, where he remotely reprogrammed an orbiting satellite armed with nuclear missiles. When the CIA notified the Oval Office, the president found he was not well disposed toward a 7-year-old having his finger on the red button. Rather than deal with the embarrassment, Abigail and Conrad Harrington willingly handed little Connie over to Dr. Hellion, and she came knocking on their door, no questions asked, thus neatly avoiding any political fallout from the debacle. Incidentally, the satellite that caused the kerfuffle in the first place had a new trajectory, thanks to Conrad, which prevented a collision with an aging Russian space station that had slipped from its orbit. No one, least of all the president, bothered to attach any significance or thanks to this factoid. Conrad's ability was at once a blessing and a curse. With relative ease, he immediately saw through Dr. Hellion's lies and understood the true nature of insane. Unfortunately, that same intelligence informed him that there was nothing he could do about it. Conrad and Dr. Hellion were equally matched opponents. Conrad's intelligence versus Dr. Hellion's security systems, agents, research, and drugs. While Conrad couldn't escape, he took effective countermeasures that made him immune to Dr. Hellion's tactics. Had Conrad's parents not been such political powerhouses, Dr. Hellion would have eagerly employed the more drastic rehabilitation means at her disposal. But in Conrad's case, the Harrington name bound her hands. Conrad couldn't escape. Dr. Hellion couldn't make him normal, thus they remained in a deadlock year after year with no end in sight. Escape was all Conrad thought about. It was the only thing that mattered, and escape was absolutely impossible. For 4 long years, Conrad remained buried alive on the 13th level in a state of unspeakable agony. His brain activity was relentlessly in motion at analyzing, creating, problem-solving, circulating its capacity exponentially growing in staggering leaps and bounds. Day and night it worked non-stop, yet Conrad had no vent for any of it. Dr. Hellion made sure of that. No way to turn it off, and it gushed inside him, a raging river of intellectual power battering against the feeble dam of his body, demanding an outlet. Year after year he existed like a half-starved dog chained in a dirt yard under a burning sun, without shade or water, and the pain and pressure turned Conrad mean and mad. If he didn't get out soon, Conrad Harrington knew that he was going to go insane, and escape was absolutely impossible. Until there was Piper McLeod. The probability of a flyer is so rare, so completely out of the ordinary, and it is the very thing Conrad needed to make an escape plan work. The minute he saw that Piper could fly, he knew hope. He carefully plotted and prepared for every eventuality except one: Piper's refusal to leave without others. How can she be so colossally stupid? Didn't she understand? To make matters worse, Piper had somehow developed the mistaken impression that they were now friends. Each night, when Nurse Toll finished night check and Conrad sat down to plan the escape, Piper made a habit of flying through his window and chattering nonstop about anything and everything that was going on inside her head, some information even a genius like Conrad dreaded to know. I saw Violet eating that chocolate brownie at dinner. I nearly split. I wanted to warn her so badly. You reckon we'll be able to tell him soon? Piper sat on Conrad's bed, holding Sebastian and gently stroking him. The little black cricket was fully recovered and liked to hop between Piper's fingers. Conrad mumbled, not really listening. I know I've been down here a good long stretch already, but I've got to admit, it's like I wasn't here at all. Like, my eyes were taken right out of their sockets, and I was walking around as blind as a bat. It's as plain as day to me now that this whole place is crazy. Like, all we do here is weave baskets and memorize the same names and dates over and over again. Sure, we're busy, but we're not learning or doing anything useful. It just doesn't sit right with me. I gotta tell you that when I saw what I saw, and you told me what you did, I felt awful in here. Piper pointed to her heart. A person wants to believe in folks and trust in things, and when you can't, life doesn't seem worth living anymore. That's exactly how I felt. Like it was hopeless. The more I got to pondering it, the more I just figured out that even if some folks are bad, there's others who aren't. So I reckon I just won't ever give up my flying for anyone ever again. I don't care what they tell me. There's just some things you gotta keep yourself, no matter who asks you or how nice they're being. Then it doesn't make any difference if folks are good or bad, 'cause they can't do anything to me if I won't let 'em. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You sure are working hard, Conrad. I'm fixing to help you too, if you tell me what to do. Conrad didn't respond. I'm real useful if you give me half a chance. Even my ma says I can husk the corn faster than anyone, and she's stingy in the praise department. Conrad not only doubted that Piper could help, but except for flying, it was clear to him that she was a terrible liability. So when the very next night Piper landed in his room in a state of great excitement and grandly announced that she'd figured out exactly how to help, he braced for. I got to thinking how to explain Dr. Hellion and her way of getting us not to use our gifts. How she explained things in such a way that we think we didn't want to do it anymore, and we wouldn't. Well, it makes sense that if we wanted to use our gifts again, then we would, right? So then I got to wonder just how I get the others to want to do it, and boop boop. I'd get the others to want to, and it came to me right off, just like that. They need to dream. Absolutely ridiculous and won't work, Conrad said inwardly. All the same, Conrad knew that if Piper's time and attention were occupied, she was less likely to get in his way or otherwise screw up an already difficult situation, and so he let the matter go. So I got right to it, and I started with Violet. And you know what she told me? She said that if she was to get out, she'd be an archeolo something. It's when folks go to far lands and dig up stuff from way, way long ago, like tombs and crypts and the like. Violet explained the whole thing to me. She says when they get to digging, they find things all sealed up, and so she figures she could shrink down real small and go inside before the others. She reckons she'd be the first one in places that no one's been near it in hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And see stuff painted on the walls and look at old King Tut. Soon as she gets herself an eyeful, she'll come right out and tell the others what was what and how to get in without hurting anyone or anything. Isn't that something? I told Violet that she had herself a real good plan. Piper looked to Conrad, but he didn't turn around or acknowledge her presence in any way. That Conrad sure don't say much, he whispered to Sebastian later on as she settled into sleep. Piper chalked his silence up to all the hard work he'd been putting into planning the escape, and the next morning approached her day with a renewed vim and vigor, excitedly reporting her findings to Conrad that night. You ask folks a question, and they'll tell you the most amazing things you've never heard, or things you never heard of, or would have thought up, even if you lived to be 100. Like Smitty's got everything worked out. He's going to be a detective and solve all the real hard crimes because he can see stuff other people can't. Isn't that amazing? I told him he'd be really good at it, and I'd hired him, and his chest swelled up like he got a balloon in it. And then Lily. She's all small and dainty, but I can tell you right now that her insides are as strong as steel. Lily's gonna join NASA and be an astronaut. You know why? Conrad didn't answer. Piper didn't notice. 'Cause she says that when they go up in space, it's real troublesome moving stuff outside the spaceship, and Lily figures she can do it easy as pie. Don't that just take the cake? I can see it too. Lily all fine in her space outfit, looking out the window of some ship, picking up space rocks or fixing a broken engine. She'd be a real credit to us all, and it'd be a shame if she didn't get to go up to the moon. And I told her straight out. She took she told me that when you're on the moon and you look down on Earth, it's real pretty, and promised that she'll take a picture to show me. Think of that! Once Piper got started, she learned everything about her classmates. She learned that Myrtle Grabtrash, a tall, thin, gawky girl whose dark hair somehow managed to completely conceal her face, was her mama's 12th child. Myrtle was born in a one-room shack on a piece of real estate shared by the railroad tracks of the Georgia Amtrak. And at the moment of her birth, a train crashed right through her tiny shack. The train, which had been mistakenly rerouted onto the abandoned tracks, didn't bother to stop, and so it took a whole week before Myrtle was finally apprehended at the Peachtree, Georgia station. Her mama liked to say it was the first time Myrtle ran away. It wasn't to be the last. Myrtle's best friend was Daisy, and Piper discovered that Dr. Hellion apprehended Daisy after she picked up a whole bulldozer and threw it upside down to prevent the construction of a hazardous waste dump. Only after persistent questioning and great patience was Piper able to extract from Daisy the information that the dump was going to destroy a family of pygmy rabbits burrowing in the soil of the proposed land. Small, Daisy told Piper in her slow way, and then held out her large hand and cupped it in the approximate size to show Piper exactly how tiny the fluffy gray and brown rabbits were. Extinct, too small, not strong enough. Daisy didn't exactly have a way with words. After Daisy tossed about a few more large pieces of heavy equipment, including a crane and an asphalt machine, the developer got a little antsy, and Daisy earned herself a one-way helicopter trip to Insane, leaving behind a family of pygmy bunnies to wage their own battle against a multinational construction company. Every day, Daisy wondered about her miniature bunny family, wondering if they had managed to escape and find themselves a new home. I told Daisy that them tiny rabbits got out, no problem. They might be small, but I bet they can run. I told her, so you know what Daisy and Myrtle would do if they got out? They'd figure they'd work together and make homes for things that don't have homes anymore. They don't have it all worked out yet exactly, but Myrtle's gonna do the legwork and Daisy'll handle the heavy lifting, and they've got a mind to get a piece of land and just collect up plants and animals and people that's looking for a place where folks will let them be. And Conrad snorted, without a doubt that was the most ridiculous idea he'd ever heard, until of course the following evening when Piper related how Nayland and Ahmed's grand plans were so detailed that they had already selected a name for their company, Mustafa Weather Solutions, and had a business plan that included a bread and butter base of helping farmers get rain, as well as dabbling in government contractions to reverse global warming. All of that would work. Excuse me. all of that would work. All of that work would support their main passion: hurricane wrangling, tsunami interception, and possibly even some covert operations in counter-weather terrorism. That last part was, of course, very hush hush. Hearing this, Conrad just about threw up his hands in disgust at the craziness of it all. 2 nights later, Piper excitedly reported that Kimber's dream was to use static electricity to create an act for the Circuit du Soleil? Is that how you pronounce that? I don't know. In which she would be called Mistress of Electricity. Kimber's act was going to be so electric, so amazing, that her audience would give her standing ovations each and every night. No comment from Conrad. There was one stumbling point that Piper endlessly discussed with Conrad, but had no success overcoming. No matter what Piper did, Jasper could not remember his ability, and had no dream other than getting home and seeing his grandmother, who promised him a puppy whom he planned to call Rex. It's like they went right into his head and took a piece out, Piper complained to Conrad. Jasper just plain doesn't know. I reckon I've asked him every which way to Sunday, and he still doesn't know. It's a right shame, too. As soon as Piper sensed that the uprising of enthusiasm and excitement for the dreams was firmly established among the class, with the exception of Jasper, she began posing subtle questions designed to cause suspicions and fan the flames of discontent. I sure miss my ma and pa. Don't you miss yours? Dr. Helen keeps telling me she'll pass on any letters they send, but she doesn't. Are you getting letters from your folks? No? Huh. Why do you think that? We don't get to talk to them. Why do you think we don't get to talk to them? The more Piper prodded and poked, the more she got the others to think hard about things that hadn't yet occurred to them. But Dr. Hellion says that if I go around using my telekinesis all the time, I'll get really bad headaches, and she doesn't want to see me in pain, Lily said with wide eyes. But did you ever get a headache before? Lily thought hard for a moment before saying slowly, Well, no, I guess I didn't. I can't ever remember having a headache. Piper nodded meaningfully. Well, then, it's a mighty strange thing for Dr. Hellion to tell you, don't you think? I said it to her just like that, Piper reported passionately to Conrad. I said, That's a mighty strange thing for Dr. Hellion to tell you. And I could see Lily got to thinking the same thing. And when I pointed out to Kimber that we kept learning the same lessons over and over again, asking her why she thought they weren't teaching us anything new, it was like you could have knocked her over with a feather. She just plumb didn't realize they were teaching the same things day in and day out. Did you notice how she was all fidgety and angry all afternoon and asking all those questions? It's because she knows something's not right. Piper paused, considering her next words carefully. Conrad, there's something else. I've been getting this strange feeling. Piper reached for phrases that could communicate the peculiar feeling of being watched and followed that had been steadily building inside of her over the last few weeks. It was as though just out of her line of sight there was a shadow lurking, ready at any moment to pounce on her. Try as she might, Piper had never actually seen or heard anything. If she hadn't known better, she would have sworn that it was exactly like that fateful morning in her bedroom at the farm, when she'd heard that man's voice, the one Dr. Hellion had warned her about. What I'm getting at, Conrad, Piper began again, is that I'm being followed. Finished! Conrad, who, as per usual, hadn't been paying any attention to what Piper had been saying, put down his pen and stepped away from his desk. You're finished? You got the plan? Piper shot upward several feet into the air. It's a plan. I can't guarantee it'll work, Conrad warned. It'll work. We'll make it work. Conrad didn't spare Piper's wild enthusiasm, nor belief in many of his classmates' random and ineffective talents. Nonetheless, 24 hours later, he contrived to disable the security surveillance in the girls' bathroom and arrange a midnight meeting that would be attended by all the residents of Level 13. Conrad insisted that Piper be the one to break the truth to the others, since the whole plan was her idea in the first place. He warned her not to be disappointed if the kids were already too brainwashed to accept the reality of their situation. He also prepared for her the fact that even if they did believe her, they'd probably be too scared to even consider the idea of an escape, or worst case scenario, lose their marbles completely. In the early hours, Piper finished explaining everything to a wide-eyed audience who sat slack-jawed and immobile. So we've got to get out of here, all of us. Conrad set up a right good plan, and all we gotta do is follow it. And what do we do once we get out? Kimber wanted to know. Where are we supposed to go? My parents don't want me anymore. What am I gonna do? But we can't stay here. They're putting poisons in us. Who wants that? Piper reasoned. She tried her best to sound confident despite Conrad's pessimism. With all of us working together, we'll be out in no time. If you stay, the only way out is being normal. But is it such a bad thing to be normal, unlike everyone else? Myrtle had spent her life running away from conflict and was ready to accept any option that would exempt her from having to face a fight. You want to be normal, Myrtle? And never again run like the wind? Is that what you want? Piper challenged, unable to understand how Myrtle would even consider staying insane. But are you sure about all of this, Piper? Maybe you're mistaken about Dr. Hellion, or got confused, Lily hoped. It's even worse than the way Piper presented it, much worse. Conrad weighed in, and the children knew better than to question his intelligence. I don't know if this is such a good idea. Piper shook her head. What if we're caught? Can't be much worse than what they're doing to us right now. Right, Conrad? Piper argued. Although the others didn't notice, Conrad was strangely quiet on this point. Piper continued regardless. Come on, y'all. It's not a crime to be scared, but we can't stay here if it's bad for us. We got something to fight for. I heard what y'all told me. How you have things you gotta do in this world. Don't tell me you don't, 'cause I know you do. Sure, they gave us nice beds and fed us fancy food, but that's nothing. Not really. Not compared to going in tombs or floating in space or wrestling a tsunami or seeing our families. It's not right what they're doing to us. It just isn't right, and that's the truth. I say we don't stand for it anymore. Silence. Each child thought about this. It was a big decision. While Conrad couldn't believe how well things were going, after all, the kids were stunned, but not out of control, and none of them had gone ballistic. Piper was exceedingly disappointed. Now that they knew the truth, wasn't it simply a matter of common sense that they would take action? Piper couldn't fathom how knowing that they're being slowly poisoned, not to mention brainwashed, that the institute was not a school but a prison, that they would immediately that they wouldn't immediately want to escape. And yet they didn't. Piper hadn't realized what a difficult task it was trying to set a person free. She dug deep and tried again. My ma told me that there isn't anything in this life worth having that comes easy. She told me that every road I walk down's gonna have a price. But what she didn't tell me, and what I learned since I've been here, is that if you don't choose the road you're gonna walk, sooner or later, someone else will do that choosing for you. Now, maybe Myrtle's right, and there's nothing wrong with being normal like everyone else. But the truth is that we aren't like everyone else. We're like the way the good Lord made us, and wouldn't that be a terrible thing to turn our backs on? I can't promise you that everything on this road is going to be okay, because sure enough, every road I've ever been on has got a bend or two, and a few hills and valleys besides. I do know this, though. I know that I was meant to fly, and I'm not going to walk out of here. I'm going to fly out, and I know what road I belong on because I feel it here. Because I feel it here, Piper pointed to her heart. So you got to choose your road right now, and you'll know which one it is, because you'll feel it in here too. Piper held her breath while fears were considered and weighed against dreams. For some it was dead even, for others the fear spoke more loudly. A small voice finally spoke up. I think Piper's right. I say we escape. Violet shrank a good 5 inches from the effort. Slowly, reticent heads began to nod. If we're caught, I'll electrocute you till you're black and crispy, Kimber wagged her finger at Piper. Before anyone could change their minds, Conrad spread a schematic of the facility on the floor in front of them. All right, listen up. Here's the plan. It was a brilliant plan, which surprised no one. It was complicated, though, depending heavily on precise timing and each kid using their talent. As most of the children had been unknowingly consuming the drugs for such a long time, some of them didn't even know if they still had their ability. Conrad set a rigorous 7-day schedule for preparation. He allowed a 48-hour period to flush the drugs out of their bodies and budgeted 72 hours of practice and additional mental preparation. The escape was far from easy, and he needed them at their best. From that moment on, the meal times brought a new challenge. Kids had to look as though they were eating so as not to arouse suspicion, while consuming only the list of foods that Conrad knew were incompatible with drugs. The list was extremely small: carrots, most fruits, potatoes, rice, and salad without dressing. As a result of their restricted diet, the kids dragged themselves about, starving and quietly complaining to one another. I'm so hungry I could just die, Lily whined to Smitty. I'm so hungry I ate some of the leaves off Bella's plants, Smitty confessed. With a bit of salt, they don't taste half bad either. You think you could score some for me? In addition to this, Conrad had worked out a practice schedule, so it would be possible for all the kids to use and strengthen their talents, and absolutely necessary if his plan was going to have any chance of working. Violet shrank at night to her room for a whole hour between 9 and 10 o'clock, and then again in the morning for another half hour. Daisy snuck into the gym and alternated between lifting the entire climbing apparatus and trampoline. Smitty and Lily performed random acts of X-ray sightseeing or telekinesis throughout the day, though many wished Lily wouldn't. She was unable to resist playing pranks. It was harder for Piper to fly, since most of the ceilings were too low, and Conrad insisted that the atrium was too risky. Piper did what she could, and she saw to it that her feet were off the ground and in the air as much as possible. For the Mustafa twins, a random hurricane above the facility or rain clouds in the shower was simply going to attract too much attention, and they were given strict instructions to restrict their preparation to mental planning. The escape was set for Friday at midnight, and as the days passed, tension built and the kids got increasingly jumpy and snappy. By the Friday morning of the escape, the residents of the 13th level were roused from a restless and sleepless night, and started what they hoped was their last day in the facility with frayed nerves and a wild look in their eyes. It's the waiting that gets to you, Smitty paced nervously in the library that afternoon. Sit down. Smitty was getting on Kimber's last nerve. You're attracting attention. Conrad said we've got to act like normal. You're one to talk, like they don't notice that you shorted the gymnasium electrical grid and blew it out 127 light bulbs this morning? Yeah, that was subtle, Sparky. Smitty and Kimber weren't the only ones the pressure was affecting. At breakfast, Daisy had somehow managed to break the dining table in half, even though it was made of steel and unbreakable quartz glass. A strange mist kept swirling around Nayland and Ahmed, and Violet had spent the entire day at half her size, and her hands were shaking so badly that she couldn't turn the page on the book she was pretending to read. Tomorrow morning we'll all get to watch the sunrise, Piper soothed them. You'll see, it's going to be an easy as pie. Listening to her words and the conviction in her voice calmed them. Smitty nodded and sat down. Myrtle's rhythmic rocking slowed, and Violet grew 2 inches. Piper's right, Conrad weighed in convincingly. Relax. There isn't a thing we have to worry about. Everything's planned, and it'll go just as it's supposed to. Nothing will go wrong now. Harrington, front and center. Nurse Toll's booming voice startled the group from their discussion. He appeared out of nowhere, glowering at the door of the library. Move it. Dr. Hellion wants to see you now. As nonchalantly as possible, Conrad strolled from the room, leaving behind 9 kids who accelerated from tentative relaxation to full panic in less than 60 seconds flat. It took Piper the better part of an hour to calm them so that Kimber stopped giving off spontaneous electrical sparks, and Violet could return to something close to her normal size. Conrad returned just as the evening meal bell rang, much to everyone's relief. He was relaxed and smiling and instantly put everyone at ease. We're in the clear. Dr. Hellion knows nothing and suspects even less. It's a go. End of chapter 14. All right. Chapter 15. Planned completion of escape, 12:05 a.m. Planned commencement of escape, 12 a.m. Current time, 11:55 p.m. Above the facility, a thunderstorm raged. Violent cracks of lightning stepped on the heels of booming thunder, courtesy of the Mustafa twins. Silently standing opposite each other in the room, over 1 mile beneath the surface of the earth, they swayed to the rhythm of the music that only they could hear, while throwing an energy force, which only they could see, back and forth between their hands. According to the plan, at 12:05 a.m., the residents of the 13th level would revel in their first breath of freedom. As it was only 11:55 p.m., 11 children lay stone cold awake with nothing but sheer panic and terror coursing through their veins, as they anticipated the 5 agonizing minutes. They still had to wait, as well as the 5 demanding minutes that would follow. There was only one person who waited with anticipation and not dread, and for that person failure wasn't possible. Lying on her bed, Piper imagined the stars that she would be gazing in the night sky at exactly 12:05, and not just the stars, but the bright futures that were awaiting each of them. Smitty solving his first case, Lily on the moon, Violet uncovering treasures from the past, She tingled from head to foot, and as her excitement and expectation ballooned, she had to hold herself down by gripping the sides of her mattress, or she would have floated right out of her room. Current time, 12 o'clock. 12, 12 o'clock and 1 second a.m. Boom, crack, boom. It was up to the Mustafa twins to knock out their exterior power conductors by hitting them with lightning. Hardly an easy task, particularly as it required a direct hit, and they were without the benefit of practice. This feat was supposed to be an accomplishment no later than 12 midnight, which made them officially behind schedule. Nayland and Abed's movements became frenzied. Outside of the facility, the thunderstorm was so intense that lightning pummeled to the ground like grenades, and even 13 levels below the surface, the chaos of the skies above was loud, violent, and ever present. Crack! A direct hit. The hallway lights in the dormitory flickered and died. Current time, 12 o'clock and 20 seconds a.m. Nayland and Ahmed silently performed a victory dance. Auxiliary power kicked in. In 60 seconds, the facility's computers and security systems would reboot. A flurry of motion erupted in each dormitory room. Kids shot out of their beds, fully clothed. Their feet hit the ground running. Myrtle flashed from room to room, checking to make sure that each child was awake, as though they could still be asleep. Deployment of the teams commenced immediately. Excuse me. Omega team, tasked with surveillance and security, depended upon the combined efforts of Smitty's eyes to see and Myrtle's speed to relay any pertinent information to the others. Smitty got into his lookout position on the third-tier balcony and began scanning for any possible threats. Myrtle took her first lap through every corridor of the 13th level. She had less than 50 seconds to complete each circuit, at which time she would report to Smitty with her reconnaissance and receive any messages. Alpha team consisted of Violet, Piper, and Jasper. As Conrad quietly and urgently pointed out to Piper, everything rested upon her. Piper had to flap to the very top of the elevator shaft and manually reroute the elevator back down to the atrium. It was Violet's task to shrink as small as possible and ride in Piper's pocket to assist with any unforeseen difficulties that might come up at the top of the elevator shaft. Jasper was tasked with waiting at the bottom of the atrium so that when Piper sent the elevator down, he could hold the doors until all the others were safely aboard. Lily, Kimber, and Daisy were on Team Mayhem. Each had to create a disturbance in a specific location at the specific time to distract attention away from the main thrust of the escape. Daisy headed for the security center. Kimber ran for the control room, and Lily's job was to create blocks of critical entry points. Conrad, as always, worked alone and was in charge of hacking into the computer and destroying data. Current time, 12:01, 19 seconds a.m. Myrtle completed her first lap and checked in with Smitty. All clear, Smitty reported. Roger that. Myrtle flashed off again. Alpha team was in position. Jasper waited at the foot of the elevator. Violet shrunk down to the size of a Barbie doll. With Violet in her right pocket and Sebastian in her left, Piper took a running leap off the balcony and shot up to the elevator shaft. Like clockwork, Daisy reached the security control room and locked the lone agent in a closet. Conrad arrived on Daisy's heels and swiftly cracked into the computer mainframe, destroying the databases and deleting all information. Current time, 12:02, 45 seconds a.m. Nayland and Ahmed arrived in the atrium and began creating a thick fog cover so that the floors above would be unable to see their activities. Conrad released security across the control room just in time for Kimber to gain entry and locate the fuel cells. Taking several deep breaths, she generated what she hoped was 100,000 volts of electricity and pumped it into the cells. Smitty caught sight of a maintenance crew on Tier 2 and dispatched Myrtle to warn the others to keep clear of that area. Piper reached the top of the elevator shaft and found the access space so tight that her hand became streaked with blood from straining to reach the red wire that would release the elevator. It's no good. I can't get at it. She wiped the blood away on her skirt. Let me. I'll do it. Piper wiggled in Piper's pocket. Piper pulled Violet free and placed her on the ledge. Violet shimmied along this narrow strip of metal and then grabbed the red wire as hard as she could. Yeah! Boom! Kimber miscalculated her voltage, and so instead of just shorting out the fuel cells, she ignited them. Current time, 12:03, 30 seconds a.m. Jasper kept his eyes fixed on the elevator shaft, but it was empty. The elevator nowhere to be seen. It required 30 seconds to make the journey from top to bottom, and according to the schedule, it should have been arriving in the next 15 seconds. Nayland and Ahmed had successfully created a thick fog cover. "Pull, Violet, you're nearly there," Piper coached, floating back and forth. "It's so hard," Violet grunted. Sweat was pouring down her face from the effort. She had planted her feet on the side of the wall and was bracing them to create additional leverage. Ah! With a burst of energy, Violet gave it her all. Snap! The wire broke free, sending Violet flying, or more to the point, free falling off the ledge. Ah! Hold on, Vi! Piper flew after Violet as the elevator sprang to life. Because the elevator traveled at lightning speed downward, Piper was suddenly in a race against time. Violet was free falling directly below the elevator's path, and if Piper didn't get to her first, the impact would undoubtedly be fatal. Current time 12:04, 10 seconds a.m. The chapter is right. Daisy and Lily ran across the atrium to join the others. "Where's the elevator? It's supposed to be here," Lily demanded. The fog had become so thick that it wasn't possible to see more than a few feet in any direction. "We don't know," Nayland or Ahmed panted. "What's happening? That's Piper's ditto. Job, go ask her." "Ah!" a wee voice screamed. Violet tumbled through the fog, and a moment later Piper snatched her to safety. Singed and coughing from her accidental fuel cell explosion, Kimber stumbled into the atrium with an unmistakable look of pride on her face. Just then, Piper's feet hit the floor and the elevator arrived. Seeing the elevator, Kimber let out a whoop. "We're getting out of here!" Current time 12:04, 20 seconds a.m. Myrtle and Smitty stormed the open elevator, joining the others inside. "We're gonna make it," Smitty smiled broadly. The first stirrings of excitement could be felt. Current time 12:04, 23 seconds a.m. "What are we waiting for?" Myrtle fidgeted. "Let's go, go, go!" "Wait, Conrad's not here," Piper insisted. Smitty stuck his head forward and quickly found him. "Conrad's leaving the security room now." "What the heck?" Kimber practically yelled. "He's gonna blow it for all of us, and after he lectured us about being on time and sticking to his plan, what was he doing anyways? Maybe it just took him longer than he thought." "Yeah, right," Kimber sarcastically snorted. "Like Conrad didn't calculate everything down to the last second. He's never wrong." She had a point. Current time 12:04, 28 seconds a.m. "Go, go, go!" Conrad roared as he ran for the elevator, diving inside. Pulling wires from the control panel, Kimber wove a blue wire to a red one. "Elevator commence," Kimber commanded. The door slid shut. "What took you so long?" Nothing, we're all right." Current time 12:04, 39 seconds a.m. Each kid silently counted down as the elevator passed upward. "Level 8, the computer voice spoke evenly. With every floor successfully achieved, hearts grew lighter and anticipation peaked. "Level 5. Jasper couldn't contain himself and he started to jump up and down excitedly. Lily's smile broke her face wide open and Violet grew 4 inches and squeezed Piper's hand. "Level 3. "We're free!" Kimber squealed. "I'm going to see the world again." Level 2. Myrtle, in a fit of euphoria, threw her arms around Daisy, and Piper turned to Conrad. "What'd I tell you, Conrad? I knew we could do it. I just knew it." Conrad couldn't look at Piper's dancing eyes and smiling face, and he turned away. Piper looked at him in confusion as Level 1. Bing! The elevator chimed and slowed. Then it stopped. "What's going on?" Shocked eyes searched out fearful faces. "Why are we stopping? What's happening, Conrad?" Hearts fell like stones. No one breathed. All suffered silent suspense as time slowed, and they watched helplessly as the doors to the elevator opened. "Oh no," Piper whispered. Click was the sound the elevator doors made when they fully retracted, exposing a brigade of agents, several lines deep, positioned in rows and armed with weapons, aiming at the elevator. There was a moment that lasted no more than a heartbeat. In it, the children's dreams of freedom continued to flicker before their eyes so brightly that they were unable to reconcile the reality of being surrounded with their fervent need to escape. The two contradictory ideas effectively short-circuited their brains, causing them to go completely blank. Alas, the stillness would not stand. Agent lunged forward and seized Piper. Pandemonium ensued. Everything happened so fast that there was no time to prepare, and certainly no time to organize any sort of resistance. There was a loud scream. It sounded like Lily. Myrtle tried to run, but they had a net. Someone cried out, probably Jasper. Daisy was the only one who proved difficult. Several agents had broken arms and legs before a tranquilizer dart lodged itself in her arm and she fell to the floor with a thud. The agents had prepared for everything. Each team was assigned to a child and prepped for their particular ability. Had the children been primed, or even had an inkling that they'd been discovered, they would have had a fighting chance. In the end, it was the element of surprise and the agent's strength that effectively made them sitting ducks. The escape had officially failed. The time was 12:05:59 a.m. The kids were promptly escorted down to the 13th level. Each child was guarded by three agents, who were not only armed to the teeth, but looked more than ready to use the weapons at their disposal. Agent, lined the children up in a row on the atrium floor. From the moment she'd been seized and restrained, Piper was so shocked that she was almost completely unaware of her surroundings. "I just don't understand," she whispered quietly to herself over and over again. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense." Conrad stood next to Piper in the atrium lineup. On the verge of losing control, her feverish utterances hit his ears in unremitting waves. "Piper, stop it. It's over. You've got to snap out of it." Nothing prepared Conrad for the look of haunted horror that had come over Piper as she turned to him. It was worse even than when he had told Bella the truth about Insane, and she'd torn the precious petals off her flower in savage movements. It was even worse than Ang Chung, who'd started to hit himself and wouldn't stop. "But we had a plan. We were all working together. I knew here," Piper pointed to her heart, "that it would work. I felt it. I knew it. How?" "Thank you, Agent A. Agent." Dr. Hellion swept into the atrium, perfectly outfitted and absolutely calm. "Quite an evening you've all had." Moving down the line, she looked each child in the eyes, and without exception, they all looked away. "I have been so worried about you all." She shook her head sadly, "so concerned for your safety and well-being. What could possibly be going on that you felt the need to—" Unable to actually use the word escape, Dr. Hellion waved her hand, indicating the events of the evening. "I've been racking my brain as to the cause of all of this, and then it came to me. Someone lied to you. It's a terrible thing to be lied to. That person probably told you things that aren't true. They made them up. Lied. I can imagine how easy it would be accept once you have mistakenly accepted the lies for truth, to jump to a conclusion where your only option is, well, to do what you did this evening." She paused and smiled. There was nothing but warmth and understanding about her person. Her whole being said, "I understand and you can trust me. I see your actions tonight as nothing more than a call for help. Rest assured, I'm here to answer your call." Dr. Hellion sighed and spoke as though she were sharing a terrible secret. "I can be sympathetic to those who are misled, but at the same time, the person who told you the lies really needs my help the most, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't help that person. So," Dr. Hellion smiled in the most kind and caring way, "which one of you will tell me whose idea this was?" No one moved. Even though Piper knew better, Dr. Hellion's sincerity was so persuasive that despite herself she began to doubt. What if she had been mistaken? If she had been so wrong about the escape, then maybe she'd been wrong about everything. What was real? Who could she believe? Certainly not herself anymore. She proved that very evening. "Of course, if you feel that you can't tell me, then I'm compelled to help you all equally. Certainly not my choice, but I will respect your wishes. Nurse Toll?" Nurse Toll came forward with a cart. On it were 11 hypodermic needles. It didn't take a genius to figure out what they were filled with drugs. It came to Nurse Toll's attention this week that you have not had appropriate nutrition. Undoubtedly, this has contributed to your confusion. Nurse Toll and I would like to rectify that immediately. Nurse Toll, please bring Jasper forward." Nurse Toll and three agents dragged a squirming Jasper front and center. The other children were forced to witness his feeble attempts to resist. "No," he stuttered. "Please, Dr. Hellion, please don't." Piper's eyes couldn't believe what they were seeing. Poor Jasper, the weakest and most helpless, was twisting and turning like a bird with the broken wing before a pack of hungry dogs. Dr. Hellion watched him without mercy, and, with the slightest nod of her head, Nurse Toll plunged the needle into Jasper's thin arm. Jasper yelped, and the kids averted their gaze, unable to watch. A moment later, Jasper's eyes clouded over, and his body became limp and relaxed. Dr. Hellion waited, but still no one came forward. "Very well, Nurse Toll. Please assist Lily." "No!" Lily's high-pitched voice hovered in the cadence of true panic. Her cry struck Piper to the quick. "Wait!" Piper stepped forward. "Wait!" Dr. Hellion nodded to Nurse Toll, who pulled the needle away from Lily's arm. "Yes, Piper?" "It was all my idea, Dr. Hellion. They didn't do anything. Please let Lily be." Dr. Hellion carefully looked at the others. I see. And no one helped you? No, it was all me, and I'm sure sorry. I understand, Piper, I really do. There's no need to be sorry. Why don't you come here and stand by me? Dr. Helene waited for Piper to shuffle forward and come to her side. There is something I can help you understand. Stand, Piper, and it will change your life. It's very important. Dr. Helene bent so that she was eye level with Piper, lowering her voice. She spoke with a quiet intensity. When you fly, people get hurt. Your flying causes pain, and it hurts everyone you love. Piper got lost in Dr. Helene's eyes, and doubt took advantage of her confusion, taking firm root and quickly spreading its poison. Piper, I'm here to support you, but it's important for you to see the consequences of your flying. You may proceed, Nurse Toll. But Dr. Helene, please, they didn't do anything. You don't have to do that to Lily. You still don't understand, Piper. I'm not doing anything. It is you who are doing this to them. I am? But Piper fought with the notion, but as the needle plunged into Lily's arm, her gut-wrenching scream took away all of Piper's ability to form rational thought, and left in its stead guilt, remorse, and pain. And that wasn't even the worst of it. As Piper was forced to stand and watch, Nurse Toll went down the line and one after another picked out a terror-filled, writhing victim and injected them with the drugs. Daisy cried, Smitty covered his eyes, Myrtle tried to run, but nothing could save them from the needle. Before the injection, they struggled and resisted. Afterwards, their bodies were limp and their eyes vacant. Each one broke Piper's heart. How could she have been so wrong? If she couldn't trust other people and she couldn't trust her own heart, then there was nothing left for her to believe in and trust. And right then and there, Piper's heart broke in two. End of chapter 15. That's the end of today's section. So intense. Ugh. Yes. Ugh, so good. Things are starting to get crazy. Anyway, yeah, thanks for joining me, Emma. It was very fun. Wow, it was a long section this time. Read for a long time today. But yeah, same time tomorrow. We will see what happens next. All right, love you all. Bye.